BAWSCA Policy Board to order. It is 1:31. And we will start with a roll call, please.
Okay, Chair Hardy.
Present.
Vice Chair Ragsdale.
Present.
Director Chambers.
Present.
Director Duncan.
Present.
Director, did anybody sneak in? No. So no Pierce, no Schneider at the moment. Director Stevenson.
Present.
Director Vella.
Present.
And Director Zichterman.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum of 7.
Thank you so much. I hope our other two members are not circling the block looking for someplace for their car to land. Some of us took the train. All right. I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate our IT staff helping us out so much. And we've done this before, so the hope was that you would be able to find us and understand the situation. I want you to also know that we have canceled a closed session for today. There really is no new information. There was nothing that would require a closed session. There's a lot of discussion going on, and that's publicly known, but there was nothing that could really help us in any policy or decision at this point. So we didn't feel the need, although it's on there for whenever we do need it. So we'll go on with that. Excellent. Thank you so much. Consent calendar, approval of minutes for the April 3rd. Do I have any questions or any motion? I was going to say, if you remember to turn your...
I'll move to approve the minutes, no corrections.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
Just, are we using mics today? Because, yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes. Very good. Yes, we are recording this. So I have a motion by Director Ragsdale and a second by Director Vila for the minutes to be approved. Any discussion? I do not see any. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that is a unanimous for those who are in attendance. Thank you so much. All right, then we'll move right then to public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on any issues not listed on the agenda that are within our purview. And a speaker is allowed 3 minutes, which just reminds me, I better pull out my timer. Oh, we got a timer over here. Oh, excellent. I have,
Lourdes, would they speak there? Okay.
okay, and we do have a microphone set up for that.
If that's okay.
Excellent. Okay, so I do have 2 cards. The first one is Dave Warner. His organization is Self. I'm glad he has his self organized.
Is that self-organized? I hope so. Okay. So my name's Dave Warner. I thank you very much for your service. From a big picture perspective, your top 2 issues are reliability and affordability. With demand down so much in the last 20 years, 2 things have happened. First, with much lower demand, reliability or drought survivability isn't the issue it once was. The second, with much lower demand and the fact that our regional water system is pretty much all fixed costs, the cost of a unit of water has gone way up. Because of these 2 issues, I'd argue today that affordability has eclipsed reliability as our top concern. Our regional water system is a gleaming, state-of-the-art piece of infrastructure that's operating at about 2/3 of its design capacity, and is supported by best-in-class operational specialists with decades of experience. How do we better leverage this marvelous piece of engineering and lower our costs? 3 ideas come to mind. First, there are little things we can do, like trying to make the SFPUC more efficient, perhaps tweak capital plans around the edges. Second, related to Director Stone's comments at the last board meeting, if the design drought is as exceptionally low risk as we think it is, freeing up some water and storage by modifying the design drought could help with costs. The first step, though, is to understand drought risk. Third, and this is out of the box, our neighbor Valley Water is desperate for more supply. There was a slide at their board meeting yesterday where they were looking at supply options that were costing well above $5,000 per acre foot. The Stanislaus groundwater basin could be a low-cost source of supply. What if we leveraged that basin and delivered at least some of that water to Valley Water through our state-of-the-art regional water system, lowering the overall cost for everyone? There are many more ideas for addressing affordability, our high cost of water, and leveraging our state-of-the-art system. I just present these as examples. But the main thing is I will hope you'll make affordability and the associated big picture thinking that's required a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate your thoughts. The next card I have is Peter Dreckmeyer, and he's with the Tuolumne River Trust.
Thank you. I always wanted to sit at the table. So Peter Dreckmeyer, Policy Director for Tuolumne River Trust. I just want to emphasize why it's so important that the SFPUC answers the questions that were posed by Palo Alto. As you've heard, Palo Alto invested $559,000 in a One Water plan looking at alternative water supplies. And our Utilities Advisory Commission rejected it and said, we don't buy the 50% rationing premise that this is based on. We need more information from the SFPUC. So I want to pass around a few graphics. This top one is from the long-term vulnerability assessment, and it shows the severity of droughts, of known droughts. Severity is how much water is needed out of storage. And you can see that the two droughts that make up the design drought were the worst and the third worst as far as severity on record. So combined, it's 72% more severe than the worst drought on record, which was 87 to 92. This is based on 269,000 acre feet demand, which is 240 MGD. And according to the LTVA, the Bay Delta plan is the equivalent of a 15% increase in demand. So you can think of this as, this is with the Bay Delta plan in place at current demand. By removing 1 year from the design drought, it would still be 35% more severe than the worst drought on record, but it would save us 25 MGD and at a cost of $4.6 billion. So water we wouldn't need to invest in, saving a lot of money. The second one, each bar shows how many droughts met the severity threshold down at the bottom. And this is based on 100 years of observed data, 1,100 years of tree ring data, and 25,000 simulated model runs. And not one of the droughts identified was as severe as the design drought. Okay. Here shows you what actual demand has been, and then the red lines were added to show what the demand projections were from the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. That's just one snapshot. We have that for all the years, but demand has always been inflated. And the bottom one compares what's in the Urban Water Management Plan demands with what the SFPUC is projecting for sales. And as we've talked about before, both have overprojected over time, but sales, the Finance Bureau has always been much closer. And you see the difference in 2045 is 37 MGD, which would cost $6.8 billion to develop that much alternative water supply. So we're talking a lot of money here. And if we address the issue of the severity of the design drought and reasonable demand projections, we can shave off so much money that would be passed on to ratepayers. Thank you. I'll pass these around.
Thank you. Peter, I will tease you just a bit. Be very careful. I know we only gave you so much time, but this is being recorded for the public, and I try really hard not to use just jargon. So there were just a few times. If you want to send that, I know you're sending it around, you can always send that to our staff, and that can be sent out. And the letter that was referenced is in our correspondence.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? I do not see anyone. And I know we're recording, but we are not, this meeting is not streaming at this point. And I would like to recognize that our other two members, both Director Schneider and Director Pierce, are here, so thank you. We were worried you were looking for parking. I had a terrible,
Even with a handicap sticker.
yes, I had a terrible suspicion. Thank you so much for coming, and I freed up one spot. I took the train. Yes, exactly. And we really appreciate the library and their hospitality. Thank you so much. All right, we're up to 5A, BAWSCA's 2021-2023 Drought Report. And some of the findings, and I believe that is Tom Francis.
Tom Francis is going to address this
Yes.
item. So.
I'll play musical chairs today, so to speak. Good morning, Board Policy Committee members. I wanted to take this opportunity at this afternoon's meeting to talk about a work product that our group at BAWSCA has been working on for, seems like it shouldn't take a year to do this, but a little bit under a year that we've been working on 21 to 23 drought report. Hopefully, as I go through these slides, you understand why it took so long. Not quite as long as the drought itself, but a good amount of time. Those maps, I know that when Steve Ritchie or our staff have presented during droughts what's been happening in California, you saw that colored map of the state. The drought in California actually started, if you will, the water year in October of 2020. We really weren't getting any rain, but when a drought was actually called was in early 2021. That map from April shows the dark red patches, which are severe drought, so to speak. Extreme drought, if you look at November 23 of 2021, it's when it almost gets into that brownish, deep red. And it just kind of extended forward. By the time we hit September of 2022, though, you can see the situation was a bit better. We had a really wet winter in 2022-23 that helped the state recover from the drought. But officially, the drought lasted from 21 to 23. So in 2014 through 17, the state was in what I call a little bit more of a severe drought. At the end of that, BAWSCA produced a drought report. We wanted to document what happened in the drought, the actions taken by the state and BAWSCA and others. And also we thought, this might prove useful. What did we learn from it? Were there any findings? It really did prove useful. Our agencies found it good as a reference. I think the board at the time also found it quite interesting. And outside water agencies also thought, hey, this is a really good idea. We should copy it as well. So at the end of the 23 drought, and I suspect probably moving forward, producing a drought report was seen as a really, really sound way to document, not just for history, but also for use moving forward, what we should be aware of or what happened during that drought. So the key things that were the objectives for this work that BAWSCA just completed was to take a look at all those drought actions that were taken, but more than that, what your respective agency response measures were. Look at how it impacted your finances within your cities. What did it have a financial impact? Also, did it impact the water quality that was served to your customers during that drought? What happened in terms of water use reductions? What was achieved? And what was asked for? Because the governor asked of the state, the SFPUC asked. For those of you who have valley water as part of your supply, there was a request there. And then what we were really hoping to do was to use AMI data, automated metering infrastructure data, to do some quantitative analysis. That was an objective. And finally, again, what lessons can we learn from this past drought? How did we behave during it? How did our customers behave? So I'm gonna click through this pretty quickly, but there's a schematic that's included in the slides, and you'll be able to see it as I kind of click through the slides, that graphically shows what different bodies did during the drought, different governmental bodies. And so there's state of California, and that's really Governor Newsom. He had a lot of executive orders that were issued, and that happened basically starting in 2021 and extending into 2023 as the drought got more severe, essentially. Also, there was voluntary restrictions that were part of that. The State Water Resources Quality Control Board was required to enact whatever the governor had mandated, so to speak, by these executive orders. And so you can see at a state level, there's all sorts of things to follow. And I'm going to kind of move on down. The SFPUC, our water provider, won't go into the specifics, but they had all sorts of actions that they took. Not as many as the state in terms of the SFPUC took one action and then the drought got worse, and so they took another action, a voluntary request for water use reduction, and then a little bit greater voluntary request. And theirs was pretty aligned with what the governor was asking. So the governor asked for a little bit more cutback, and so we had to, through San Francisco, had to ask for that of our customers. For those of you, like I said, who also are getting water from Valley Water, they had their own specific actions in terms of what they were asking of their member agencies and then, in turn, the citizens. And finally, BAWSCA, we did a few things as well. One thing that BAWSCA does well, I believe, is issue statements. And when I say we do that well, those statements are really aligned to help you as representatives of your cities or your water districts relay what we at the BAWSCA region, we collectively view is needed, or what we're doing to try to put out the message about conserving water during a drought. So this is kind of a, when you look at it all in one piece, you'll see that all those little dots at the bottom, those are just months. It starts in 2021 and it extends into 2023. You'll see those arrows, kind of those big long lines with an arrow at the end. That just shows that's continuing forward. The one thing I'd point out, and it's kind of what we're saying in that last arrow, which is just by the nature of things, even though the drought ended in the hydrologic sense of the equation, so to speak, the governor didn't really end some of his executive orders until into beyond 2023. And for those of you who get part of your water from Valley Water, you might chuckle a little bit about it, but they continue to have these voluntary requests or requests to use less water even well out of a drought. So it tends to be a mixed message when you're not in a drought and an agency still is asking for water use reductions. But anyway, that's the nice thing about what we're doing is we summarize in our document all of these things, all of these individual actions. We have appendices with each of them listed. We're talking about what each of your agencies has done separately so that you can see and track what actions your council took during the drought. It just serves as a nice single document repository for what happened. So let's just talk a little bit about what your agencies did. Now that urban water management plans are including these elements, there's, I hate to use initials, WSCP. That stands for Water Shortage Contingency Plans. Urban water management plans have to include water shortage contingency plans. What they do is they lay out steps of progressively stronger measures that a city or your water district has to take as a drought becomes more severe. And essentially what this graphic shows and what the report talks about is how beginning in April of 2021, some agencies enacted what they call Stage 0 of their water shortage contingency plan. Stage 0 is kind of an initial stage that gets out the message that, hey, we're kind of in a drought. You customers should think about using less water. As the drought progressed, you can see the majority of the agencies entered into what's called Stage 2. And each agency will have its own unique water shortage contingency plan. They're designed to achieve a certain level of water use reduction, and the plans talk about what level that is. Stage 2 actions could include things such as only allowing outdoor watering during maybe a significant one day of a week type thing. They could also call for no outdoor watering, just different things that your residents within the city have to do to comply, and what you, your staff at the city are doing to make sure or to try to achieve compliance. So you can see a lot of stage 2 requirements starting in June of 2022. That was kind of the height of when things were pretty bad. And again, those were actions that your governing body either took or your staff were able to take because your governing body gave them the ability to do so. One of the things that I believe that BAWSCA does very well is put out the message, communicate, and outreach to the region, sort of speaking as one body. And I think that you as board members understand that probably as well, if not better than I do. And so there was a lot of things that BAWSCA did that kind of fell under one of those boxes up there. We worked with San Francisco on a drought messaging campaign. We also worked with all the other large water agencies within California on what their statewide drought messaging campaign should be. Finally, we worked with state agency staff about their statewide campaign that they used. We have a website. Right now we're actually even doing a greater level of update. But during the drought, we updated our website to include a lot of banners to alert the public that, hey, we're in a drought, use water wisely type of wording. And also hopefully easily directed a member of the public so that they could get to your specific agency's water conservation pages if they exist. We held workshops, and many of us on staff were asked to present at town halls. I know me myself, I presented at a couple. This is kind of during the early COVID, or well, later part of COVID, but 2021 COVID was still strong. So a lot of those town halls and workshops were virtual. Had a drought occurred today, I think many of them might be in the future in person or some sort of hybrid. Generally speaking, a lot of the things I would call outreach, but the one thing that I think is unique, and BAWSCA staff here who championed that effort could probably talk about it if I called them up to the room, but Tier 2. We implemented Tier 2 for the first time during this drought, which meant San Francisco shared with each of our agencies how much supply was available, and we used what I would call the old Tier 2 plan, or the one that's in place now, to figure out how much allocation each of your agencies would be getting. I wouldn't say it proved a challenge because we quickly came out of the drought in 2023, but it was enlightening and it helped inform the Tier 2 development process that was underway. Because some agencies said, boy, I don't know if I would have been able to get along with that amount of water had this continued into more and more years, or if the cutback requested by San Francisco was more severe. So again, really useful for us to say we've enacted it. I hate to call this a pilot because it wasn't a pilot, but that's what took place. So if you look at, aside from the triggering of those, I'll remind you, Tier 1 is what we call the plan that San Francisco follows when they figure out how much water goes to their retail customers and how much water is available to the wholesale customers. Tier 2, probably don't need to remind you of that, but that's how we figure out or go about the process of coming up with how much of that wholesale customer pie each of your agencies get. So we served in that role. I think we did that well. But what we probably found out is that what I believe that what probably should have been clear way back when, but really wasn't until we ran it, is that a drought doesn't start in April the way that the WSA is written. A drought could be called in November or December or really any time of the year. The way that our documentation was written in our water supply agreement pretty much assumed that a drought would be called by SFPUC in April, and based on that, there was a certain length of time that San Francisco had to come up with how much supply would go to our agencies, and then there was another certain amount of time that our agencies would have, or BAWSCA would have to work with your agencies. Anyway, a timeline was laid out, stipulated dates and weeks that it took to do this. Really became clear that, you know what? that timeline really isn't here during the 21-23 drought, because we were in, I think it was November when San Francisco first made the water shortage call. So challenging, and again, we considered it as part of this new Tier 2 plan. And in this drought report, we talk about that. Because again, we want to document what happened. What were the good things and what were the bad things that we had to deal with during this 21 to 2023 drought. So that off-cycle thing was of great note. If you look at that graphic, there's the blue line dashed is the Tier 2 allocation that this existing Tier 2 plan said that you agencies or our agencies should have. The actual deliveries are shown in that solid orange line. So you can see, our agencies were actually using more water than was called for under Tier 2. The one thing I'd say is this was a voluntary reduction, so there was really no financial hit to your agencies for not meeting that cutback. But had there been, it's just something to think about. Like at the end of the year, there'd be an accounting, and if your agency hadn't been able to meet that reduction call or that allocation call, there very well could be an action by San Francisco at the end of that year to charge you for that extra water that you purchased. So just things that we point out in the report, and I'll be happy to talk to you about it if you have questions about that. The water savings achieved were notably lower than in the previous drought, the 2014 through 2017 drought. And granted, our agencies and our customers have really gotten good at using less water. And so it's probably a lot harder to cut back, perhaps, than it was in 2014 to 2017. One thing I do want to point out is the 2014 to 2017 drought was quite a bit different than the 2021 to 2023 drought. Let's face it, we were in the midst of kind of recovering from the COVID pandemic in 21-23. We had different governors in place. The messaging by the state was quite a bit different, and the actions required by the state were quite a bit different. We talk about that in the drought report. So it's not like we're trying to say we can never meet these type of cutback calls, and look, 21-23 proved it. It's more like just the statement of fact. We did not cut back as much, and there could be several reasons why. We just talk about some of that in the report. I don't want to conclude it yet. I don't have enough to conclude the reasoning. I believe that demand hardening could be a reason. I don't have enough to say at this time because I haven't done any studying on it. I can't say for certain that's why. Water quality issues remain an operational challenge. So I'll try to explain this. When we're in a drought, our customers and your customers essentially are using less water, but you essentially have the same storage tanks. You have the same distribution lines. You've got water that you're getting from the city, but at the end of the tap, people aren't turning it on as much. So you might have water sitting in your system longer. And that creates a system that essentially means the water, I wouldn't call it stagnant, but it's just sitting there longer, and that leads to some water quality problems. Ultimately, it can lead to what we call nitrification. And you can treat that. You can do things so that your water isn't as old. But one of the things that I'd say is the more common thing to do is you flush your lines. Well, you really don't want to flush lines during a drought. It just shows a bunch of staff from the city or from a water district, sitting next to a fire hydrant with a whole bunch of water flowing in the gutter or wherever. It's just not a visual that you want to show the public. Water agencies are justifiably concerned about doing that. So there's some concerns to think about to try to make sure you maintain that high water quality. There's, I won't go into the details, but there's ways that you can, through equipment trucks, essentially capture any flushing flow so that you can then recycle it as you move along to flush. You can put in what we call sort of these mixing systems that if you have some MGD tanks that you can kind of make sure that the water doesn't get to the stagnant point that it has a water quality problem. Of course, you can also just dump that water into your wastewater system, which is a a pain to do. You don't want to do it. It's financially, you're paying for that water, and then all of a sudden you're discharging it. You don't want to do that. So our agencies, not all of them experience this, only I'd say a handful of them. We talk about this in the report. I think that might be interesting for you folks to focus on, especially if your city or your water district staff wants you to consider investing in equipment if needed to avoid having to perhaps struggle with this nitrification issue in the future. Well, one of the things I have to admit I was disappointed in, and I didn't realize that this would be the disappointing part. And when I say I was disappointed in it, I want to say it led to one of the best findings of this work. So it actually was, there's a huge silver lining on this, was that even though several of our agencies have this automated metering infrastructure data, because they put in AMI units in place, what they found out was that hey, they really don't have access to all that data that's being stored. So without getting into a whole lot of details, the AMI data, it collects it almost on like a 15-second level. So if you've got thousands of homes with AMI in place, then that's just a lot of data being sent out. Most of your cities don't store that data. You have whoever you bought your AMI unit from, and there's some manufacturers, provide that service of storing the data. So you would think, oh, anytime I want to get that data, I'll just place a call and they'll provide it to me. Well, that is not the case. Some of those, it comes at a cost. What we found out by going to our 5 agencies that we had hoped to use as a subset of this review, a couple of them called their AMI vendor and they said, oh, that's going to cost you $20,000 to provide, or $10,000. I will give credit, Director Pierce, to your particular city. They have Justin Chappell was smart enough a few years ago to realize that, and actually he himself every day downloaded the AMI data and kept it in the city of Burlingame's records. So if you get a chance, I would pat him on the back for BAWSCA.
Yeah.
Redwood City.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah. So
I'll give it back to you, don't worry.
so what we've they did say they have a lot of data. So when you look at our report, we weren't able to do the deep dive into what we wanted to use AMI data for was to be able to see when a particular drought measure was enacted, what was the immediate or near-term response by residents within their service area. And we wanted to compare, we didn't want to just look at one agency, we wanted to see how, let's say, there was a mailer that was put out by Redwood City on January 5th, and a mailer that was put out by Pursuant Hills on January 10th. Could you really tell from AMI data that mailer made a difference? And so, I mean, that's just a quick example. But we weren't able to do that. We did, though, because Redwood City did collect data, we were able to show, if you will, an example of how that data would be able to be used. And that's in the report if you want to take a deep dive into why it's probably important to have AMI data for more than just telling a customer that there's a leak. I mean, there's a lot of things you can use with AMI data, and I'm hoping that that you folks would maybe get some information from this report on that. But what we did recommend, and I think when I say the silver lining of this, is it showed all of our agencies, and we've talked to them since, that if you want access to this data when you either buy AMI or if you have it, make sure with the vendor that you've organized to buy these from that you have a good contract in place that either tells you what it's going to cost to access data or already gives you access to the data without having to be paid a major fine or cost to do so. Couple of quick things. I know I've taken maybe more time than I should have here. Preparing for the next drought, we have completed the Tier 2 plan, and now it's in the process of being adopted, hopefully. But also one of the things that we decided to do, that we needed to do, is every year we need to run Tier 2 so that we share with each of you, if we were to have a drought based on the storage conditions today, here's what your allocation could be if the San Francisco called for a 10% reduction or a 20% reduction. Just to keep it in everybody's mind, at the forefront of their minds. If there's a drought, and this is what the cutback was, here's what your agency would have to be willing to take. So that's happening every year in May. Our staff is doing that. We are clearly of the opinion that regional outreach and integration with other agency communication efforts are needed. That third bullet about budgeting, you know, the last drought, it happened when I say it happened pretty quick, in 2021, we realized pretty quickly, we being water agencies, not just BAWSCA, that we needed to start this outreach campaign. There was a little bit more of a handshake agreement with San Francisco about who would pay for what. Like, who's paying for the billboards? Is it BAWSCA? Is it SFPUC? Who's paying for the work at the San Francisco Giants game? Is it BAWSCA? Is it SFPUC? I mean, there's some arguments back and forth. Christina Tang, thankfully, is helping me make some arguments about who pays for what. But what we recognized is we need to have a plan in place before a drought over who pays for what. And it needs to be in writing so that I don't have to argue with the counterparts over there at SFPUC about what's fair and what's not fair. So that was a lesson learned for us, and we're going to embark upon that this year in terms of developing something more formal between San Francisco and BAWSCA on what's the correct way to go about that. Just some other things. We continue to work to enhance our conservation programs. My staff and along with direction from our GM are working at, well, what programs are needed. It's part of the strategy effort as well. Also, we like to see more of a statewide approach next time around, and it's no offense to our current governor and the staff that they put in place, but when Governor Brown was involved in the last drought, I don't know what you folks think, but there was a lot better use of road signage and other efforts to bring out the need to use less water. It was less prominent this time around. So we think more outreach is needed. And AMI data, I already talked at length about what we need our agencies to consider so that we, as well as your specific agencies, can make use of that. Research on the topic of demand hardening. I believe that one of the directions that you folks might ask of us is to take a deeper dive into the fact of are we less able to conserve water than we have been in the past, because we're, you know, maybe your customers are already using a fairly low gallon per capita per day number, and has demand hardening occurred? It's a topic that gets tossed out a lot, but I think that maybe my own personal opinion is that more work on it or more research could be valuable to be able to say with a little bit more definitivity, yes, it's happened or it appears to be happening. The actions that we've recommended the member agencies to consider, we think that continued financial monitoring and planning is needed. If you can think about it, if it was me and I was sitting in perhaps Mid-Peninsula Water District shoes, I would want to know, okay, if there's 10% less sales happening during this year, and given my 3-year capital plan, how hard up am I going to be to make ends meet? You know, what is the financial impact of a drought going to be? And I think that we've shared with our agencies, you might want to think about that as part of your financial planning process. You know, do some of that work if you haven't already. Also, this water shortage contingency plans. You know how much, you being the agency, you know how much you were able to achieve, and you know what you were asked for. How good are those water shortage contingency plans that you put together? Do you need to look at revising them as part of this new urban water management plan that you're required to put together? Those urban water management plans are due every 5 years, and the latest version is due July 1st of 2026. So they've all got to work on those plans. Again, this AMI data thing, it could be very cost prohibitive to do the stuff that I really wanted to do. I don't know. I'm not in the position where I have the contracts. I do know, though, that folks like Redwood City have decided, well, we probably can't afford to have the vendor do it. We're going to do it ourselves. That type of thinking has to take place. Not all of our agencies are rich in terms of the number of staff they have, so that may be a lot harder to do. And maybe that's something that comes out of the strategy that for some of the smaller agencies, they want BAWSCA to assist in some manner or form on that. So I don't think you want me to talk about this slide. So I'm going to close. Hopefully you're okay that I went a little bit over, but I wanted to talk a lot about this report. It will be put up on our website. I've had a couple of minor little edits to some graphics. It's probably going to be later this month, or not later this month, hopefully by the end of the week. I want it by Friday so that I can post it. And that's it. Director Snyder.
Oh, I was going to say, Director Stevenson was first, and then Director Snyder for questionings.
Thank you for the report. It's a lot of interesting data, and as you said, elements like AMI to improve the measurement and how we're doing, and also research and demand hardening definitely warranted. I certainly noticed in my time since the 2014 drought and versus 2021 is that there is a lot less response from the community on reducing water use, particularly on landscaping, and they've returned to green grass and that type of thing. So it's interesting how the behavior has changed. But I also recognize the communications and the measures by the state were much more dramatic in terms of requirements, and I think the population responded accordingly. But the one thing I want clarification on slide, or it's page 11, but I think it's it's on the agencies phased into drought response. Yeah. Am I reading it right, that it took 10 months for all 25 agencies to finally put in something into place?
Yeah, now, part of that's correct, and part of it's because the way that the governor's executive orders came out, there was different stages of a drought that, well, the executive orders kind of mirrored when an agency had to either enact stage 2 or did or didn't need to. So, yeah, some agencies felt that they were achieving water savings and didn't need to enact stage 2. Others waited longer.
Okay. So it was basically the agencies themselves saying, hey, we're doing great against our projected, but
well,
it'd be interesting to see what the water use pattern was for those agencies that said that they were achieving the savings, because my suspicion is it's probably not true, that there was a delay in response because things take time to trickle down. But I kind of look at data like this and say the more effective we can throttle, the more options it gives us, whether it's supply side, whether it's free flows, whether it's conservation elements. And so that's kind of an interesting takeaway, that the response in 2014 had a better effect. I would imagine if we had this same chart for 2014, everybody would be in tier 2 almost very, very quickly. And we wouldn't see this 10-month delay.
If again, when the report comes out, there's a lot more detail in here. I just took a kind of a handy dandy one, but each agency took different actions. You'll be able to see the savings that were achieved at each of the agencies, and certainly the water shortage contingency plans are different for agencies. So some of them might not have wanted to enact stage 2 because maybe they knew there was going to be more challenges placed on their residents than others. So, but take a read of the report. I'm happy to answer any questions off to the side too once it comes out.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Director Snyder, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to reading the report. You had mentioned, and I can't remember if it was tier 1 or tier 2, that if districts overuse their allotment, they could be fined. And just so that y'all know where I'm going to go, kind of from here on in our agreement in BAWSCA's agreements and the member agencies' agreements with SFPUC, based on state legislation, are there things that we should be working on legislative changes? And this is just one thing in my old world, acts of God. And we cover a very big range. Different fires can happen, different earthquakes can happen, different heat waves can happen, all of those triggering more water use. And I think, I don't know if we've ever been, any agency's ever been billed for overuse, but I think we should look at an act of God provision, because if your city is suddenly in an immense long-term heat wave, I think of Labor Day 2017, when my city was 104 degrees for 5 days. Never before like that. And we have a big festival that week and there was no one there on that. But we also have the oldest population in the county, which means we've got more people at risk to heat waves. And Director Stevenson, UCLA just came out with a brand new equity forestry map for all of our cities. It's really cool. It shows where we're lacking in trees. Hence, you got to keep watering those trees during the drought. So I'm wondering in the report, as you find these conclusions, are we saying we might need legislative change?
Let me take this, Tom. So it's essentially bilateral agreement, the water supply agreement between the wholesale customers in San Francisco. So if we feel that there's a necessity for a change, we can propose an amendment like the amendment that we have most recently done. The current amendment that we are in the process of ratifying calls for some mitigation, which is the family plan. So, and just as a reminder, what that says is that if one agency exceeds, but the whole region is within the allotment, then there's no penalty for any one agency.
Okay.
And even it's even proportional, so that if you go over by 5 and the entire region goes over by 2, then your penalty would only be on the 2 and not on the 5.
I think we talked about that.
Yeah,
didn't
we've
we
talked
recently?
about it. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So there is
It's
some
almost like a
some
foreign
mitigation
language.
in there. We could certainly take under advisement
Okay.
a thought of, are there extreme climatic conditions that would cause us to deviate from some of these things? And we could talk to San Francisco about that. We'll have to decide whether that's something we'd want to expend political capital on in terms of that bilateral negotiation.
Well, and in
So-
the long-term water plan that we all gave, what we were hoping to look like, especially from our last board meeting, there was a pretty good discussion of all of the additional acts of God that can be happening out there, even if the fire is caused by an arsonist, so, in that area. Okay, the other question, you brought up water drainage. I believe we took a lot of flack when we were flushing our own city water pipes, so we now collect it. But I will tell you, SFPUC did a big project around the corner from me, and for days, they were flushing water down the hill. So can we encourage SFPUC to walk the talk on that one? And then, I already mentioned this this equity forest interactive map. It's really cool. All of us are different. We're all different size. At the Millbrae Council meeting last night, where they blamed me for high water rates. And they felt that BAWSCA should be doing more. I'm going to go back and say, well, if the 7% increase that the city of Millbrae is doing, what if that 7% is for their own infrastructure versus our components? It's not just a simple 7% blame BAWSCA on that. But I was wondering, because there are 26 of us, and many of you are bigger and may have more capacity, but have all the other agencies done really incredible work on how to cut costs that the other agencies might learn from? And that cost could be from somebody complained that 3 people came and checked their meter. It's probably that we had some new staff and we were training them, so we're researching that. But what are some of those lessons learned that all of us could begin to implement? And there was a discussion of AMI, which I believe my city does not have. And being that my city is very price sensitive on things, meaning I think we're probably one of the least water per capita consumption agencies. The discussion of, oh my God, now we're going to put in automatic monitoring systems. And I don't think that council will vote for that, but I think it's the right way to go. So, just what can we each learn from each other? I don't know, this is going into my second and a half, almost into my latter half of the third year. And I can't remember if we've ever had a discussion. Maybe y'all do it at the staff level and it never gets to the elected official level. But sometimes the elected officials need more data to be able to push staff in the right direction. So I look forward to reading the report. This is just kind of what I heard you say.
What I would say is that we tend not to generally look at operational costs of the water agencies. We do offer, as I'm sure Tom would say, where we can, shared resources so that we can lower the average cost to each of the agencies. So on a variety of topics, whether that's cross connections or water quality concerns or any of these other matters that would have a nexus to BAWSCA, we definitely are looking to say, does everybody or a lot of folks want help? And we can offer that on a subscription basis, where that we potentially can lower the overhead on those contracting costs. So that's one thing that we do, but we don't tend to get into the details of each agency's operational plans. So.
Does that happen at conferences then, at the staff level?
Yeah, well, we have these monthly WMR meetings. I'll give you an example of this past drought. There was this flushing issue. A couple of the member agencies, and I'm not going to be able to say what this truck name is, but there's a couple of them that bought this truck that basically allows you to capture the water that's been flushed and use it again for flushing. And so some of the other agencies wanted to borrow it. I mean, maybe they had to pay a rental, but it was shared. And so there's a lot of, one of the greatest things about BAWSCA is it not just brings you elected people together to share your experiences, but it brings in the water management reps. It brings in the staff together to talk about their issues. And particularly during a drought, there's a lot of shared issues. So if one, I forget which agency, I want to say it might have been Mid-Peninsula, there was talk about how they had come up with the most effective messaging was they got together with a grocery store, and on the little carts, they put the drought message on it. And that was seen as one of the most highly effective ways about talking about saving water. Best bang for the buck. That was shared with some of the WMRs, and I think people took it to heart. Now, I can't say how many of them followed it, but that's an example of something simple that I believe helps when BAWSCA brings people together. We have these 3-4 hour meetings once a month. People talk not just around the table, but around the coffee at the breaks. And so I think maybe Director Schneider, sometimes it's this informal process that helps. Also, we have the avenues that we've created through our website and others for a greater sharing of information. And we'll hopefully find in the Strategy 2050 effort that they want BAWSCA to make that sharing even greater, regardless of what the topic is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a-
Yes, Luis, please.
That's the quick thing that I was going to mention earlier, but, you know, Tom answered it.
Director Vila, could you
to-
turn on your,
It is on.
is that?
To your question, the water manager group will be the group that will give you that information and share that information. And as far as the messaging on the shopping cart, I mean, the message was, you're spending a lot of money on groceries, you don't have to spend it on water, save it. You know, so. Anyway, but as far as the AMI, besides the monitoring and the cost, I mean, it could save you a lot of money from leakages, which is one of the primary reason why we adopted the AMI. We only have AMI meters, you know. The data that's provided is immense, you know, it's a lot more than we may need, but it's there, it's available to us. But one of the main purposes for the AMI was to save water from leakages, because all the agencies, they lose a lot of water through leakages. Okay? So, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. In fact, that was exactly what I had written down, asking Tom, how many of our agencies out of 26 have AMI? I was just curious because it sounds like the data is really good if you capture it, and that makes a difference.
Well, Nagin, do you recall how many?
I know half of them are fully implemented.
Yeah.
But
the cloud data as well.
or just the system for metering?
Okay.
So-
We want to capture that.
Yeah, I'll capture it. So I, for the purposes of the recording, I asked staff who handles AMI or manages it for BAWSCA to provide an answer. So 12, close to half the agencies have fully implemented AMI. If you, a couple of years ago, BAWSCA did a bit of a deeper dive into what the plans of agencies are in terms of their AMI implementation, and I want to say it's maybe 85% to 95% coverage by 2035. So, but it is a significant investment. I don't want to underestimate that. It is not cheap, but it is, as Director Vela said, it is a very effective way of managing against leakage and water loss.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I know my jurisdiction is looking into this. And when you talked about leakage, it was interesting to me that they felt the best guess was in the United States that 40% of our potable water is lost. Now, it did say that that was higher on the East Coast than on the West Coast. We are much more careful with our water. But it was interesting, I just finished a book on Israel's use of water, and they were able to go from, I think it was 20% down to, they got it between 8 and 4% for leakage. And that, what a difference that made, but it was a lot about systems and checking everything and making certain that their general populace understood. And I appreciate that. That's why the AMI makes a difference. Director Stevenson and then Director Ragsdale, please.
It's an interesting comment about there's still 13 agencies that have not deployed AMI. Has BAWSCA ever sponsored a buying program at a regional basis for individual cities to participate? Because obviously that would have a profound effect or impact on the price points.
We have not looked at a regional buying program. There's some legal issues to consider if we did that. You can imagine not all the agencies want the same type of meter or the same type of vendor. For us to go through that process might create a situation where, let's say, ACWD or some other agency did not want that type of meter. I'll point over to our attorney, our general counsel.
That was a great segue.
Yeah,
Please.
right now there's a lot of competition in the AMI space and consolidation. And when you buy the meters, which are different, you're also buying usually bandwidth on certain, so like it's very complicated. The IT and privacy provisions are like out of control, and I think it would be really hard to do a piggyback type contract. But we have had multiple discussions at the WMRs about sharing information. Because it's a huge investment. It can pay off. I'm not happy about what Tom found with the data collection and the fact that it's highly competitive. It's not standardized. So that's gonna, hopefully the next generation will be more so. We're kind of at the early stage.
Thank you. I had made a note also about the data capture and making certain that you're aware of it. Those of us who haven't jumped into it yet, maybe we'll learn from those of you who did. Director Ragsdale, please.
Yes, two things. I just second, third, fourth. I guess the AMI data for leakages makes a huge difference. Your teenager runs over your line, and instead of finding out about it when you get your huge bill the next month, you get immediate notification that your usage is off, and then you can go and figure out what line your teenager probably ran over, or your wife, whatever. So it is very helpful. I do remember, and I wasn't on council then, so I don't know the details, but I do remember implementing ours is WaterSmart. I don't know if that's the brand name, but implementing our system you know, there were some growing pains, but I do think that it would be a great place for the water management reps to share that information, because they know the details of the growing pains, and I'm sure now that, you know, about half have implemented, they would have all sorts of tips for the best ways to implement getting these all on there. And then I just had a question with regard to the nitrification. You were talking about the different possible solutions, and one, was that something you could like put in the water? What was
you
that?
mean the mixer? It's an
Yes.
actual mechanical device
Okay.
that basically spins. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think I talked too much about it in this particular report, but we can provide more information if you or your city crews are interested. So.
Okay, that was intriguing. All right, thank you. And fantastic report, and you definitely did not go too long. We were riveted, so I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
When, assuming the general manager agrees, when we post it, we can send an email out to
Excellent.
point
Let
the link.
everybody know, yeah.
Mhm.
I had made a note, you made a comment about stadium water use in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, it's maybe a touchy subject. Basically, during the Giants games, they had a couple of instances where San Francisco staff had sort of a table outside, and were providing some information about using, conserving water, and we had I believe the gentleman's agreement. Conservation activities in the city were paid by retail. Conservation activities in the region were paid by us. So like they basically had us pay for the billboards, and I thought, well, you should pay for whatever you did at the Giants Stadium. And they said, well, no, that's regional in effort, because everybody goes to the Giants games. And I said, well, yeah, but I know a lot of people from San Francisco who drive down 101. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I appreciate that, just because Levi Stadium is within the BAWSCA area for my city, and that's why I wanted to just follow up. I appreciate that, because we just unveiled the time clock. It is 1 year out before FIFA gets here.
Ooh, wow.
So that was today, so. Yeah, we're on the clock. Wonderful. Okay, I'd like to open this up to the public. If there's any questions, I understand Peter Dreckmeyer has a question for, if there's a comment or question, that's fine. And if there's anyone else also from the public who would like to have a question or comment on this report.
Peter Dreckmeyer, Tuolumne River Trust. I wanted to share a few of my takeaways from the recent drought. So the first slide here, since my last slides went over so well, I'm sending more around. The water shortage emergency was declared in November of 2021. And at the time, the SFPUC had 1.33 million acre feet, 1,033,000 acre feet in storage. So remember, current demand has been under 200 MGD, that's 225,000 acre feet. Divide that from 1,033,000 acre feet, 4.5 years worth of water in storage. The second slide here is the low point during the drought. That was December 5th, 2022. There was 932,000 acre feet in storage. Now, refer back to the first slide I sent before. The deficit of the 87 to 92 drought at 240 MGD demand was a little under 800,000 acre feet. And at the low point of this drought, we had over 900,000 acre feet in storage, which that means at the low point in this drought, if we had a repeat of 87 and 92 with the Bay Delta plan in place, we could manage it. Pretty shocking. So what happened? The SFPUC, they issued a drought surcharge, 5%, because they were telling people to use 5% less water. And they had to remove that for fiscal year 23-24, but they'd already budgeted for it. So up here you see they had a deficit of $25 million in city that year. And then they had a deficit with the wholesale customers of a little over $5 million. And I'm sure the wholesale customers, from selling less water, face the deficit as well. So there are financial repercussions. Last thing, very interesting. It turns out that 2020-21 was almost as dry as 76-77. And yet, at the end of those two-year sequences, we had 350,000 acre-feet more in storage recently. And this is because of the water first policy, which I'd be happy to talk to people about, and efficiency. So everything changed so much since the 87-92 drought, but the planning has not. It's still about design drought. It's still thinking about 265 MGD. So I'd love to do a workshop for this group. And I've offered it before. I offer it again. I'd love the PUC to be here. We can have a healthy conversation. But there's a lot of money at stake. And there's a lot we can do to reduce rates. Thank you.
Thank you. For anyone online, we're also passing around those charts.
Dave.
Yes, please, Dave.
Thank you. Just a very quick comment that, you know, in the WSA, the SFPUC can unilaterally decide when to implement a water supply emergency. And they do that, as Peter described, you know, based on their policies. And so this is just yet another reason. If they have so much water in place and I were to go over my allotment, I'd be pretty upset if I got charged going over my allotment when they had that much water still in storage. So I just think this is yet another motivation to say we really need to understand what their policies are and what the risk is associated with their policies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? I do not see anyone. I do not see any more questions or comments from the directors. Unless
I can run it. Here go.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate that. Always good information and to be passed on to our other groups. Right. 5B, CEO General Manager Performance Evaluation Process.
Okay.
Tom Chambers, take it away.
It's getting to be that time of year. Actually, we need to, by contract, present the evaluation in September. So my intention is to, after the July board meeting, to release an email that has the evaluation form. The process this year will be essentially the same as last year. The big difference is we have a new CEO. And so it's really going to be based upon his performance since the 1st of December to the end of the year, end of the reporting year. But that's a big difference. If anybody wants to see major changes, we can talk about it, but let's consider about next year, not this year. As you may recall, we're using a Google form, and the form really has 13, I call them numeric fields. It really says exceeds the standard, meets the standards, fails to meet the standards, or I don't know, or I can't, it's not observed. It has 13 questions like that, and then there's 4 sections where you can give some, I call it free response. It's really verbal response. What he does really well, what he does really bad, things I think we ought to be doing, and that sort of stuff. So there's 2 different sections to the report, and also you can be anonymous if you want. The goal is 100% participation. I really do expect to see more not observed this time because we haven't observed Tom as much as we had observed Nicole. So, but not observeds don't count against, oh, he did really bad or he did really well. So please respond, and not observed is okay, no response or I don't care is not. So let's do that. What I do for the numeric responses, or those 13, I can see if everybody agrees to about the same field. I can measure the spread of the field by the standard deviation, and you will get that information. Tom will get that information. So it's really useful. The more observations we get, the more useful it is. But we really want the CEO to focus on what's most important to the board. On that email that you'll be getting, you'll have a link to the website, or not the website, to your form. I don't know what the cutoff's going to be yet, but I will in July. you'll have a report from Tom on a summary of annual activities, you know, what he says he's done to help us. You'll have a sheet that has some BAWSCA background for those who may be new to BAWSCA or maybe not that new. And then there will also be a sheet on the responsibilities of the CEO. We can't hold him responsible for something that he's not responsible for. So that will all be provided in that email. September board meeting will discuss, okay, I'll do a summation, and then we'll discuss that in closed session at the September board meeting. One thing we don't need to do this year, like we used to have to do under Nicole, there's no compensation reaction required. You know, the contract calls for a 3% increase in total compensation. Total compensation being the salary, including deferred salaries, and also his car allowance. So it's just going to be a straight 3% increase, and that's on the contract that we approved last year. Are there any questions or comments?
I'm not seeing any yet. I do have a thought. Oh, please,
Okay.
Director Ragsdale.
I think the process has been fantastic, and all of your reminders super helpful, especially these are the responsibilities, so don't hold them responsible for things. I think that's a very, very helpful to let everyone know. And then I would just add what you had said in the past, that for new board members to please contact their predecessor, and that can help form their opinions.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about the time frame because it is over July, and some councils go over hiatus. That might be a struggle. I know we won't be looking
It will probably be mid to late August. You know, normally we don't have
Okay.
BPC in August. either.
Right, right.
So, you know, you'll have at least 2-3 weeks to
Okay.
respond.
Well, and I like the idea, having just retired as a teacher last week. Yeah, I'm still smiling from that one, but I haven't cleaned my room yet. But the reality is reminders are always good. And I will say, I'm trying to remember on the form if it requires you to fill out each one, because you can make that a
No.
requirement.
No.
That there has to be some sort of response. We can talk about that. I like it when I get a survey so I can kind of judge my time. This should take you about, you know, there are so many questions or something, just to help someone with their time frame.
Well, I think it really depends on how much detail you go into, because I remember one board member last year had a huge write-up. Now, those 4 can take a long time.
That's
The-
true.
The 13, all you need to do is fill in the circle. Or,
Yeah.
you know, click the circle.
Maybe
And
even
so
just telling.
You could do it in 15 seconds. You can do it in 15 minutes. No, I'm not. But, well, I mean the 15-second one, maybe. But,
Maybe
not really.
telling people how many questions there are. I
Yeah.
will say, because it's nice to know that, you know, we're not going to worry about any action for compensation, but having just gone through this process with, for our city attorney and our city manager, how each one of them answered back to us and said, this is so valuable to get some feedback. How am I doing? Is there anything I'm not doing that I
Yeah.
need to do more of? And because you have such an easy job of only working with 26 entities.
Yeah, I will say that the CEO will get a copy of all the responses, not just my summation. And anybody else, I think last year we gave that to everybody. So probably we'll just, everybody will be able to see everybody else's responses. If it's anonymous, it's still gonna be anonymous.
And yeah,
But such as life, you'll see the responses.
excellent. Well, you'll get your grade.
For a
Ready.
partial year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate you mentioning, because when I looked at it, I went, already?
Yeah,
I had
Yeah.
the same thought, but it's because we try to do it at this time of year, no matter who is the CEO.
right. And
Gotcha.
it's in the contract, we need to do it
Mhm.
for September. And we have a September board meeting, and we don't have a lot of board meetings, so.
Exactly. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
thank you.
Appreciate that. I don't see any pushback. I did hear that we like the process. We feel that's good. And I hope Tom will find that helpful. And it's always good to know where you're doing a good job.
And we want him to work on what we want,
Mhm.
and I'm sure he'll appreciate our comments.
And that all voices, when I say that, only 26, all voices are heard.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Or you can say 25. We'll have GBMID and.
Oh.
Neil, he needs to do
Randy
one.
doesn't have to respond twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, only 25.
Good.
That's so much easier.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
All right.
Next, CEO reports.
Okay.
Great. So I just have a couple of things this afternoon.
Pardon me, is there any chance you could do public comment on that section?
Oh, yes, of course. I apologize. Yes, please.
So it's just
Public
very quick.
comment from Dave Warner.
So it's just very quick. I just would say the selection committee did a wonderful job, and I've noticed two things. The first thing is the dialogue of these meetings and the board meetings is much richer than at least what I've noticed in the past. I don't know how much CEO Smegel has driven that, but it's just wonderful to hear that these ideas are discussed seem to be more robustly. The second thing is I'll just mention CEO Smegel came to a Palo Alto Utility Advisories Committee meeting with Danielle, and those are some of the most tedious meetings. But he did it because they were discussing the WSA, and I don't know exactly why he did it, but it turned out to be quite a controversial subject, and it was just terrific that he was there to hear that stuff, as I know he's trying to get this thing through and get done. So I just want to say that passion and interest was noticed.
I appreciate that, and we all love meetings. If there's any reason for a meeting, we seek those out. Thank you. Absolutely. Okay, we'll move on. I appreciate public always. CEO reports, please.
Okay, just a couple of things. We'll get you out of here in a little bit here. So the first item is the demand study update. Just a reminder that we are facilitating an updated wholesale customer demand study. That's one of our big projects in the work plan. And the results are primarily going to be used to support the agency urban water management plans that are due next year. We heard that a little bit from Tom. We plan to use alternative scenario developments. We had some public workshops where I think Peter and Dave and many others came and gave some input on some of the parameters of the demand study. And so we're looking forward to hearing about alternative scenarios as a result of this project. And as you know, we regularly coordinate with SFPUC on planning processes. One of the things that's come up in relation to some of the questions from some agencies, we thought it wise to clarify some of the planning timelines and availability and responsibilities of San Francisco when it comes to this process. So I was actually really hoping to get a letter out to you this morning, and that didn't happen this morning, but it will happen this week, where we are requesting some confirmation, requesting some capabilities and understanding of the capabilities of San Francisco to respond to this demand study process as a whole. And one of the things in particular that's going to be important is they are also doing a retail demand study. And so when you talk about the drought and how a drought might affect the BAWSCA region, the whole region, you need to have both the wholesale and the retail side. And so what we're hoping for is the ability to use their baseline and our baseline, as well as if they are going to do alternative scenarios and all our alternative scenarios, to kind of run those through their drought model and give us some more results about how that might impact the alternative water supply program, how that might impact San Francisco's presentation of urban water management plans, and how it can inform then the planning processes for all of your agencies. So I hope to have that out this week. I'll share that with the board when we get that out, and I hope to get a response in due time, hopefully relatively quickly, from San Francisco acknowledging that they plan to assist us in the ways that we expect them to assist us in those processes. So happy to take any questions on that if anyone has any. And then I just have a quick update on water supply conditions. This is courtesy of SFPUC. They couldn't be here today. Normally, actually, they don't normally make a presentation at BPC, only at the board meetings. But just to share this with you, there's not much change from the last time we presented at the board meeting in May. The system is essentially full from a reservoir storage standpoint, so that's certainly good news. Reservoirs around California are generally full. There's a couple of differences from that, but for the large part, the big reservoirs, Oroville, Shasta, are very full for this time of year, above average for the date. We've seen this graph of the Hetch Hetchy precipitation. It's looking very, very close to the precipitation of 2024 water year. So the red line is this year, and the green dotted line is 2024. So it's really right on. Haven't had much precipitation in the last month or so. And just to show you that probably with most everything done, the median is about 31 inches, and we've had 29 inches or so of precipitation in the upcountry index. So all in all, very normal water year. I will say what I'd heard in the media was this is one of the few times that we've had 3 really good water years in a row, particularly 2 years ago when we had that tremendous water year in 2023. So I don't know that anybody thinks we've ever had 4 good water years in a row, and that can't be a prediction, but it'll be interesting to see. Just be wary of having a down water year, down skiing year or whatever next year, because it hasn't often happened that there's been 4 good years in a row. The snowpack has essentially gone to 0. I don't know that the snow pillows index that they use reflects all of the snowpack, because I imagine at the higher peaks there's still some snow there. But the dramatic decline of the red line, which is this year, I think is interesting. Just it's a little bit more steeply sloped. We've heard a lot about a warm spring, and as the climate warms, you're going to see that more and more often, that the snowpack dissipates much more quickly, and that could be a pattern to watch in the future. The water available to the city is plenty. This is a graph that they share. The red line is the amount that is obligated to the irrigation districts. And you can see the bluish line is above what they need to fill the system on July 1st. And so there's an expectation the system will be filled on July 1st. Our total deliveries, this is the total regional water system, I believe including retail, it's up this year. We've done a little bit of analysis because we were curious. The green line is this year. I think a lot of that early increase in the green line is from Alameda County Water District. They had one of their other sources. They have 4 different sources of water. One of their other sources is offline this year, and they had indicated they were going to purchase more from San Francisco. So that shows up in the chart. But we are using a little bit more water this year than in the past few years. The next subject, if there's no questions on water availability, the next subject is the Bay Delta Plan update. This is essentially, as Director Hardy said at the beginning of the meeting, essentially no firm update here. That we continue to await various decisions from the state board, and particularly interested in that last bullet, which is the expectation that at some point they will produce a scientific basis report for the Tuolumne Healthy Rivers and Landscapes program. That was initially promised last fall, and so we're still waiting for that. They're also, as I understand it, working very closely with stakeholders. The governor's office, the Department of Water Resources are all working and meeting frequently about these subjects, but no reportable items. So our legal team, I think, as Karen may have mentioned, is kind of in a waiting mode. We haven't been spending a lot of money on this because there's nothing for them to act So that's in a sense why we're not having a closed session. So also happy to take any questions about Bay Delta, if anybody has those.
I do not see anyone. Is there anyone from the public that had a question about the Bay Delta? Do not see anyone. We'll let you continue.
All right. Last thing, maybe Danielle, do you want to report on this? We don't have a slide. Okay.
Excellent. Wanted to thank Millbrae. They were the first agency to pass the updated Tier 2 plan and the WSA amendment. I really appreciate her staff moving that forward expeditiously. We have all but 4 agencies have scheduled adoption with their agency, and those 4 have indicated they will adopt before the end of October. So we're on a really good schedule to move that forward. That's all I have to share.
Thank you, Danielle.
That is very good news. Director Schneider, please.
I just want to let y'all know that Danielle did an amazing presentation, and she had that big cast on her foot. Because I had told the city manager, I didn't think you'd be there. So you did a great job. Thank you.
And it was nearly 10 o'clock, I think, when she finally got on. Maybe 9:30, yeah.
So you're saying she got the pity vote?
No, she gave a darn good presentation.
Of course.
Really good new slides that we haven't seen before.
Good.
So.
Good.
We look forward to that, and thank you for your hard work.
That is the end of my report, unless there are any other questions about the SEO letter.
I do not see any. I will tease you, Director Stevenson used the term trickle down. We always use water terms when at all possible. So, of course, none of our conversations or meetings are ever dry.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't resist. Shame on me. Wonderful. I appreciate everyone's time. I do appreciate your willingness to come to different venues to navigate the parking and your hard work and your willingness to read a lot of reports and take in a lot of information, and to even be excited about seeing the next report from Tom. That's exciting. And so we will adjourn. It will be our next BPC meeting will be August 13th, Foster City at the Wind Room. And my understanding is, I'm hoping that
We're hoping the elevator is fixed by then.
Yeah, that
so
was the problem.
We'll let you know if there's a change associated with that.
Because there was no access otherwise,
Yeah.
and especially when we have a few of us that are not as ambulatory.
Right, and, like me. And as Chair Chambers mentioned, we sometimes don't have that August meeting, so
Yeah,
hold,
we'll see that.
Yeah.
Put that on your schedules. We'll let you know if it's necessary
yeah.
for BPC.
Yeah.
If it's not, then it's
You
always
get a-
easier
you
to
get a free
cancel.
afternoon, yeah. Were there any comments by committee members?
Comments about the,
Number 9.
that's when I asked if anybody had any other comments, and I didn't see any.
Okay.
Okay, excellent.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Pierce. I'm faster with my water
What's all right,
bottle.
I just remembered, I was reappointed last night in a 4-3 vote by my council, which is exciting.
Yes.
And one of the things that was a discussion point was a procedure. And so I am curious if your agencies have a specific procedure for filling the appointment. And I'm going to talk to Allison about what the legislative priorities and regulations, the format around that. But I just thought if some of the agencies have some sort of procedure that they follow, if you're happy to share it with me, that would be lovely. If not, then I can make up my own and share it with them. Thank you.
And we're glad to have you back as always. Thank you so much. All right, now I think we are really done, and we are adjourned. Thank you so much.